What I have in front of me is a representation of my entire bug out system, not just my bug out bag. Most people have a single linear plan when it comes to bugging out, and it's usually something like grab your bug out bag and go and live in the wilderness until the dust settles. The reality is that disasters change as they progress. Whether you're preparing for an EMP or a natural disaster, civil unrest, or the persecution of God's people driving us out of the cities and into the wilderness, we need to have a modular plan that allows us to adapt to change as the threat progresses. For this, I have a bug out fallback system that allows me to adapt my plan as I go along. Now I'm going to run through my entire system from get home bag right through to bug out bag. I'm Clarice, welcome to the Live Ready channel. Bugging out in the wilderness should be your absolute last resort, but it's also not feasible to think that we're going to bug in our homes indefinitely. For example, something like civil unrest usually spreads as it progresses. It may start in the city centre and it will spread to the roads and the surrounding facilities until eventually you've got roadblocks, road closures, you've got barricades. The roads become eventually completely gridlocked and you can't get out of there. That spills over into the surrounding suburban areas until eventually the villages on the outskirts or in the countryside are pillaged as well. It's only at that point that you start looking at bugging out. And it's part of the reason why God tells his people to move out of the cities and live in the countryside. So what's in front of me is a bug out fallback system. My get home bag should cover all of my needs for a period of 24 to 48 hours. I can have some caches along the way, whether it's a buried cache, a waterproof container that you've buried somewhere on your route from work to home, or it's a vehicle cache, some container of goods or a bag that you keep in your vehicle that you can resupply whatever you have exhausted from your get home bag. That should help me to get to my primary bug-in location. Remember, there's a big chance that you're not going to be at your primary bug-in location when that threat manifests itself. So you need to first get to the point where you can bug in. For most people, a primary bug-in location will be their home because it already provides for all of our needs. From there, if you have to leave your home or your primary bug-in location, you can move to an alternate bug-in location. It's still better than trying to make it on your own in the wilderness. And once you have to leave your alternate bug-in location, then only do we start looking at bugging out. Getting home from wherever I am when disaster strikes may not be as simple as it sounds. Like I said, there may be gridlocks, there may be road closures, I may not have access to fuel, so even if I am moving in a vehicle, it may only be for a certain amount of time before I need to go on foot. To summarize, the differences between my get home bag and my bug out bag is my get home bag is more geared with urban elements. It is for light travel and it doesn't have such robust equipment as my bug out bag does, or as what I keep in my vehicle cache or my home. My bug out bag, on the other hand, is more geared for the wilderness. It has more robust equipment in it, and I don't need to travel as light with my bug out bag. I'm taking more equipment and I intend to stay away longer. Short term, long term. I've made a separate video on what I keep in my bug out bag. You can go and check that out. And if you see a card come up, it's because I've made a video about it before, or I'm linking something that I think is relevant. My get home bag needs to fulfill all of my needs for a period of 24 to 48 hours. In my get home bag, I need to have a pair of shoes that I'm happy to travel in for a couple of days, even if I end up going on foot. So this is a pair of trail running shoes. They're Adidas Terex shoes. They are well worn in. I have them on me every day. Now this is particularly relevant to women who wear high heels to work or men who wear suits to work, because you're not going to be able to travel on foot very far in those shoes. If you work really far from where you live, it also helps to have a change of clothes, either in your get home bag or in your vehicle cache or a different cache, because you may need to go on foot at some point. So if we think about the looting in KZN last year, We saw a lot of petrol stations and a lot of stores closing because they were concerned that they were going to be looted. So fuel and other resources became very scarce, and you had to travel long distances to get those resources. So if you break down or you run out of fuel halfway, you need to be able to go home on foot. For this reason, I have a solar power bank. It also doubles as a torch of 900 lumens, and it's a nice recharging solar power bank. I have another power bank for my phone because communication is so vital. Now, if you live more than 100 kilometers from where you work, you might find that you need to supplement your get home bag with some more things. Maybe something warm, maybe a pair of gloves, maybe you need something for safety. I have a water filtration system in here. I keep an oven bag in here. I did make a video, you can actually boil water in an oven bag, and a sleeping system that is not as robust as the one in my vehicle. So this is just a poncho, but I keep a space blanket or a mylar blanket with that. That's just to help me thermoregulate. I may need to stay over somewhere for a night, especially if I'm going to travel far. I also keep a small O-light in my get home bag, and something like a headlamp is great to add to your bug out bag. Then there are some obvious things like a bit of paracord and a knife. What I also keep is a silkcock key, this guy over here. Even if I can't access water through a faucet, I may be able to use this to access water from buildings. Now, this over here is a burner. It is an air gun, and there may be some controversy around the carrying of firearms, depending on what your background is and depending on what your beliefs are around that. I can tell you from experience that even just carrying an air gun on me in my hand in the bush at a range of 50 meters or so, you can't tell the difference between a Glock and a burner. So it's a really great way to ward people off, especially if there's unrest and you're a woman traveling alone. It makes you seem that much more prepared to defend yourself, and it may be enough to ward off attackers. So I keep that with me. I also keep a knife on my belt. You may find that something like a multi-tool, maybe you've got a Leatherman or something like a Swiss Army knife, is actually more useful to you than a fixed blade knife is in your get home bag. And that just once again goes with your get home bag will have different elements in it than will your bug out bag. So I keep this is a Victorinox Helmsman that goes in my get home bag, as well as some food sachets. I usually carry some chocolates in there, or protein bars. I really like protein bars, so for me that suffices as a meal. Really important, remember to carry cash in your bag, because even if the systems are offline, the internet is offline, the banking systems are offline, some stores or some institutions along your way may still accept cash, and you may still be able to resupply from the stores. I have a little fire kit in here as well. It's a miniature one. It's only got a ferro rod and a little bit of tinder and a lighter, which I'll most likely first go to, and if the lighter fails then I'll go to a ferro rod. But I'm less likely to try and make a fire in the city. I'm more likely to try and lay low, wear something that makes me look more grey man, that makes me blend into the crowd. I don't want to stand out. I don't want to have any kind of camouflage gear in my get home bag, because I'll stand out in the city or in an urban environment. Whereas when I go to my bug out bag, that's wilderness survival, that becomes camouflage, that's fine. Now in my vehicle I have a more robust sleeping system. This is a Unigear top. It has the silver stuff on the inside, so it does help a little bit more with thermoregulation. If I make it to my vehicle and I travel in my vehicle for a distance, I may also have a communication system set up in my vehicle, something like CB, ham, or a dual band radio. Those get used very often in South Africa. The VHF, UHF channels are quite popular. And I may have something like a bolt cutter that will help me to travel through fences and to get my vehicle through different environments. In my vehicle, I also keep a blanket and a pillow, a small travel pillow. Perfectly enough. I've got some extra water in there. In fact, there's a whole water tank in there and a 12-volt shower system. So I'm busy kitting out the vehicle for long-range travel, as well as to make it a bug-out vehicle, but more about that later. Remember to harvest everything from your vehicle before you abandon it, if it comes to that. I also carry a couple of medical kits on me. I actually have a few. There's one in this bag, there's a trauma kit in my vehicle, along with all of the other vehicle specific things. And you'll start to notice that a lot of the stuff that becomes too heavy to carry with you during the day or during your everyday life, because nobody carries their bug out bag to work with them, you can stash in your vehicle. So you can supplement your get home bag with your vehicle kit. So let's say I manage to travel home using my vehicle partly, or I break down halfway, but I manage to go it on foot the last little bit. The main reason why most people will use their home as their primary bug-in location is because it is an existing shelter. It caters for most of our needs already. We have an existing security system. We have running water from the faucets. We've got electricity. We've got a food stash. Some people even have 10-year food stashes. And we also have a community of people who we can support and who can support us in turn. If you are lacking a resource and your neighbor is lacking the resource, but you can help each other out, then by all means, right? Under security systems, we also have surveillance. So we have all of these gadgets in our homes that already allow us to remain safe, at least for a period of time. But if your home is overrun by 50 looters and they are coming in waves and waves of looters, eventually you're going to be forced to abandon your home. You're going to be forced to abandon whatever place you are staked out in. And you need to plan for that eventuality. It's not realistic to think you're going to remain in your home indefinitely. Doesn't matter what the disaster is. Something like a flood or a house fire could actually push you out of your home, and then you do need to be able to grab your bug out bag and go. We've evacuated due to fire before. Family members of ours have evacuated due to fire. The recent flooding in KZN should really have alarmed people to the necessity of having a bug out bag that you can take and leave your home, go to an alternate bug in location, or go to a shelter somewhere so that you can wait out the worst of it. Natural disaster, doesn't matter what kind of disaster, EMP, civil unrest. When it comes to the implementation of the mark of the beast, if you do not accept the mark of the beast, you won't be able to buy or sell. It means that you won't be able to pay your bond or to pay your rent. In that instance, you might find yourself bugging out as well. And we know that this is going to lead to the persecution of God's people, and that will drive us out of the cities and into the wilderness. Now, you can have any amount of caches between point A and point X. All right, so you can have any amount of supplementary stores of food, clothing. I've seen people put knives in caches. You can have maps in caches. Depending on the area that you might be moving into, when you reach that cache, you can have an add-on map that joins to the previous area that you were in. You can have extra water in there. You can have extra food in there. So preferably, you would want to move from your primary bug-in location in a vehicle as far as possible, because going it on foot means that you're going to be carrying all of your gear for a very long time. And people manage to make their bug-out bags really light, but if you're going to start carrying things like MREs with you, it's much better to carry some of them in your vehicle, at least until you get far enough out of the way of whatever threat you are leaving behind. So MREs are great, but they are really heavy. Depending on what you pack your bag with, your bag is going to be relatively heavy. If you're traveling in a vehicle, you can carry a crossbow quite easily, where if you are carrying it on foot in the bush, it becomes quite cumbersome. It's not impossible, but it's also a great home defense system to ward off the conspicuous and the curious, and alarmingly accurate if you need to make a point. Now, in your bug-out bag, you may carry more something like a fixed blade knife, like this Becker Kephart BK62 is a nice knife to have in the wilderness. There's a USMC, one of the Marine Corps Kabar knives over there as well. Whereas here, I have folding knives. I do have a fixed blade knife that I carry in my get home bag, but I'm more likely to be using a multi-tool if I'm traveling through an urban area. When I get into the bush, I need to start chopping things. I need my silky saw. I need my hatchet, stuff like that. That's when I'm also going to use my compass. And I think probably what's the most prominent thing on this table that shows you the difference between point A and point B is the shoes. So we go from running shoes or trail running shoes, which are perfectly fine for the city, to a decent hiking boot for making it in the wilderness, and some really warm gear thermal gear, something like a merino wool jersey that will go in your bug out bag. Although merino wool jerseys are really lightweight, so they can actually get carried in your EDC or in your get home bag as well. I also carry all of my important documents and I store them in my bug out bag. And that includes all of my animals, medical records, passports, some cash as well, anything that is particular to me as a person, to my identity that I may need on my route at some point. So I carry that in a waterproof bag, just the C2 Summit one, and they're actually very useful for carrying tinder as well. Things I carry in my bug out bag are a fishing system, a small trapping system, a more robust and a more complete or comprehensive fire kit. I made a video about that one as well. You're welcome to go and check that out. I also have a camping hammock which can be set up as a tent because I foresee myself having to evacuate or bug out with our animals, in which case I need to be able to enclose them and to keep them safe as well. So just having a tarp is not going to suffice. You can add a quilt. This camping hammock comes with a quilt, or you can add a small sleeping bag, or even just something like a merino wool blanket will already make a huge difference to you. In a canteen cup combination rather than a plastic water bottle, it allows me to boil water, and I can also cook using that if I need to, which I wouldn't be able to do as easily with the bottles like the Stanley water bottle that I've got in my get home bag. I have this aluminium one as well, but it's not ideal for boiling water. I also have some more rope in there. I keep a 10,000 millimeter waterproof jacket in my bug out bag and a change of clothes that are insect repellent and UV protective because you may not have time to change. I know this from experience. A family of ours know this from experience. You may have to evacuate due to fire in the middle of the night. You're wearing your pajamas. You've got 10 seconds to grab your kids, grab your pets, get out of the house. And if you have a bug out bag packed, you may be able to sling that over your shoulder, and that gives you a change of clothes and a decent pair of shoes. And don't forget the mylar blankets. They can make a huge difference to core temperature maintenance, and they are so lightweight and easy to carry. And I think at some point we are going to have to leave our homes to acquire more resources, because in the state of disaster that we are preparing for, we are looking at long-term societal collapse here. So we're thinking about the lack of municipal services that you currently have. You may not have running water in your home anymore if you are not off the grid. You may not have electricity, so you may need to go and gather firewood at some point. So bugging in indefinitely, never leaving your home, is not really reasonable. It's also worthwhile to note that bugging out per se may not be exclusively living in the wilderness. You may end up living outside of the city, perhaps in a wilderness location, but I think it's reasonable to say that there will be some travel between urban areas and rural areas in order to acquire resources, or maybe to do medical missionary work and then returning to where you are bugging out for the evening. I don't think that long-term bugging out is an easy feat, but we need to be prepared for that, and we need to have the skills to do that too. But that will see you traveling, and possibly on foot, depending on the amount of resources that you have access to. Perhaps you don't have access to fuel. So during the KZN looting, for example, we saw a lot of shortages in food. There was even a shortage of ammunition and baby products. People were flying small private aircraft into KZN to deliver ammunition and baby products. And that's within a matter of a week. In our case, in South Africa, we are sitting basically on the verge of a nationwide blackout. And you don't know how long it is going to be before the power comes back on. And it is an absolute excuse for something like the looting in KZN. It happens just like that. So think about all of these things that you're dependent on, and if the disaster that you're preparing for actually occurs, what are the widespread effects of that? So that you can prepare yourself properly, not just your get home bag or your bug out bag, but also at home and everything in between. Along the way, you may even lose some people. So you may have thought that you would be bugging out with your partner, but your partner has enrolled in the military and they've enlisted and they've gone to war, leaving you by yourself, or maybe with children or animals that you then have to evacuate from whatever area. For that reason, it's good to have a community of people, preferably like-minded people, who will accompany you on your journey, whether it be bugging in or bugging out. Now, I know that there are some people who are absolutely certain that they will be better off on their own, surviving in the wilderness, and that's perfectly fine. But I think for the average lay person, having many hands makes light work, and you can support each other because different people have different strengths. Now, I hope this bug out fallback system has sparked some interest in your mind, and that you will also develop certain fallback points for yourself so that you can stay ahead of whatever the threat is that you're facing. Leave a comment below, let me know what your suggestions are, and until the next time, live ready.